Igniters podcast. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Fran
And I'm Jena Wilmers.
and we are your Ember Igniters. Today we're going to do a little introduction of some of the things that are important to us. So we're going to start off with just a quick, brief overview of what we've done in our past episodes. That's really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to talk about the vision of fire and then some of the terminology that we're going to be using. And then finally, we're going to get right into the heart of our message, which is how do you rebuild your fire, because it's never too late to be great. So let's get started. I want to just review with you, we started at the beginning, and the beginning for us is really in the Bible, Genesis. And in Genesis 1:26, God says very, very clearly that he wanted to make people in his image. And I love that, because that means we're not God. We're just an image of him. So we reflect who he is. Then we went on and we discussed about how one person, a decision that one person can make can truly affect a whole ripple effect of people. So that one decision was made by Eve and in the garden, and it changed our humanity. And here we are today. So sometimes we feel hopeless, and we discuss that out of hopelessness, there is actually hope. And we told you the story of a 9-year-old girl named Keela, and she had a really rough life. But what happened to her was she found her answer in Jesus Christ. Then we went on to talk about how we can inadvertently and sometimes purposely develop wrong fires in our lives. And then we went on to move into how we are able, through courage and hard work, which is what you've all done, to make some changes in our life. And so we're really excited about what we're going to be sharing next. We had a vision that God gave to us, right, Jena?
Yes.
I mean,
a really vivid image at the time that he gave it to us.
It was so clear. It was about a fire. Mm-hmm. And we recognized that we needed to delve into what did the Word of God have to say to us about fire and what it was that God had called us to. So what we learned so far is that there's 3 very important things that a fire needs in order to be a fire.
Yeah.
Kind of like us. There's things we need in order to be who we are. So oxygen is one of them. Fuel is the other one, and heat is what it emanates. So oxygen to us is really the life of the fire, and that's our God. He's our passion and our fire. And then we talk about how it needs fuel. Well, fuel, when Jen and I were really looking at it, we said, what is fuel? Well, fuel for human beings is this constant desire for knowledge. Yes. If we're not learning, we're not growing. Right? Mm-hmm. So we know that we have to constantly be growing and learning. So knowledge is fuel for your fire. And then finally, what happens when this fire bursts into flame? We get what's heat, and we refer to that as the passion of our lives. What is the passion of our lives, and how do we get there? That's how the fire is built, and we're going to talk a little bit more about those very things. And so Jenna's going to...
Isn't it interesting when people have passion about something, you can feel them, you can feel it in their soul when you're around them. I just find that really fascinating, that you can just feel it. It puts something in the atmosphere.
It does.
Just like the heat.
It's attractive.
Yes.
It's very attractive.
So. Very much so. So going on with our vision of fire, the Lord kind of gave us 3 pictures and of 3 different types of fires. And we want to start off and kind of paint some pictures for you of what those fires look like and what they mean to us when we talk about them. So the first one is a campfire. Yeah. And we call this fire the comfort zone fire. It's partly called that because it's typically a small fire, and it's defined as a small fire outdoors used for cooking and warmth. And it's in a controlled fire ring, so it's typically small. Yeah. It's warm, it's soothing, and it's very comforting. And this fire to us represents a place of security and complacency, kind of like where we all kind of are in our daily lives. We are okay with being in our comfort zone. We don't like to stretch a lot because it's uncomfortable sometimes, and we're uneasy in doing so. The second,
just to say, it's called comfort because that's where we feel the most comfortable. So it's easy for us not to want to move out of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. The second type of fire is a bonfire, and we call this the building zone fire. This fire is pretty large in size.
Yes.
And it's built in a meadow or on a beach or in a field. This fire also sometimes can bring warmth, but it's also entertaining and celebratory. But you have to work at this fire. You have to continue adding fuel to this fire to keep it going, to keep it from spreading, and to keep the largeness of this fire. And if you don't, then it kind of shrinks down and becomes a campfire. So this fire to us represents a place of growing and stretching and learning, getting out of that comfort zone.
Oh yeah. It's blazing.
Yes. Well, and it's hard. I mean, it's not something that's easy or really something that you want to just jump right into.
No, it's hard work.
It is hard work.
Tending that fire.
The bonfire also reminds us of the pillar of fire. Like when the Israelites were escaping from Israel, they had to have faith that God would keep them going through the wilderness and guide them every step of the way.
That's right.
And he did so with a pillar of fire so that they could see at night.
That's right.
And that
it illuminated their path.
Totally illuminated their path.
Yeah.
And we want you to know that that's the same for you.
Exactly.
That is the way that God will provide comfort and security for you.
That's right.
And we have to have faith that God is going to walk us through the night, walk us through our life, because he's preparing us.
That's right.
And he's building us up to take us to the next level.
It's what he so wants from each one of us. It would make him so happy.
Absolutely. And that's the way that we're going to get to a place where we can all carry out our God-given life assignments.
That's right.
It kind of reminds me of a quote by Holly Furtick that
I
really
love her.
kind of struck
She's
us.
a great person.
She really is. She says, faith requires work, grit, and perseverance. It's okay that what you believe you heard from God doesn't necessarily match up with how you're feeling or your current circumstances.
That's so good, isn't it? Because we are emotional people, and sometimes we let our emotions determine what we're going to think and feel.
Well, and I think a lot of the times, too, we allow our emotions to guide us.
Yes.
When really, it shouldn't be, because our emotions can play tricks on us.
They can. They'll lie to us.
Absolutely. So the third fire that the Lord showed us in picture was pretty interesting to even learn about, too.
It was.
But it was a forest fire, and we've all seen it depicted in the news and on TV. But we refer to this fire as the destruction zone, partly because this is a large fire that's very out of control. It spreads super rapidly. It's very hard to distinguish. And one of the interesting things about a forest fire is that it is not considered or classified as a forest fire until the flames consume vegetation over 6 feet tall.
That is so incredible to me. The concept then that you can have a fire going and you don't know that it's really a destructive fire.
Right.
Because it hasn't reached its peak, but that doesn't mean it's not going to. And so just hearing that 6 foot marker.
Yeah.
What kind of markers do we have in our lives?
Absolutely. And sometimes the forest fire can actually take the tops of the trees before it will move down into the lower vegetation, which I just found fascinating. because you would think that most fires start from the ground up. But if you think about it, a lightning bolt that comes down is actually going to start it from the top down. And so that was just really fascinating at that time.
Yeah.
So anyways, a forest fire is very destructive. It's very uncontrolled. It consumes everything in its path, which it just is so devastating to watch it happen.
I was raised in Southern California, so you know that they often have fires there, and it is interesting. They don't necessarily have them just in forests, but they are rapid. Well, like you said, all of a sudden, before you even know it, there's a fire going. Sometimes that happens. Those destructive things happen in our life, just like that.
And we don't even see it coming.
No.
A forest fire also typically creates panic and anxiety and feelings of being trapped. And we refer to this fire as being at a place of hitting rock bottom. And we all know how easy and how quickly sometimes you can hit rock bottom and you don't see it coming. But just like a forest fire, when the smoke clears and we all look at the damage and kind of just pick ourselves up and brush ourselves off, something really awesome happens. And vegetation and regrowth starts to take place.
It's an amazing thing of nature.
Isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah.
And just like when someone hits rock bottom and they finally make a decision to pick themselves up, dust themselves off, make a decision to change and actually follow Jesus or to stop doing the destructive behavior that they are doing, it's just like the regrowth of vegetation from a forest fire.
Isn't that's so hopeful?
Yeah.
That's what we really want to continually convey to you, that no matter where you are in life, there is hope. So Jena's just really giving you 3 basic fire categories. Well, I want to talk a little bit more, and we're going to talk a little bit more about, well, what is a fire comprised of? How does it start? What does it look like? So in order for a fire to start, it requires some kind of a spark. And a spark can be, you've seen it, when you take 2 pieces of rock or something, or 2 pieces of metal, and you hit them together. What starts to happen is you see these little sparks that start to come off. And that's really what we're talking about, is sometimes it's the hard things, and all of a sudden a spark just kind of comes. And sometimes those sparks light things and sometimes they don't. But the other thing about a spark is that it's really also the kind of thing that we like to use the term kindle a lot. Kindling is that thing that suddenly it just sparks into you and it ignites something within you. So like, we were talking a lot about how we were going to start this ministry. We had no idea how we were going to do it. And we had a nice weekend together that we were going to sort of chart our course. And just like that, we were sitting, and all of a sudden God just dropped into us this whole concept of the fires. And it really, truly ignited something in us that brought us to where we are today. And that's really exciting. So that's what a spark does. So once that spark actually hits that kindling, or the whatever little twigs or things that you have in it, it transforms it into a flame. And that's the most exciting.
So cool.
That's the most, it's like when that happens, you see a flame and it's like, wow. But that flame can easily die.
Yes.
You know, we can have great thoughts in the moment. God can drop something in our lives and we can be all excited. And then the next day it's kind of dead. Unless, and this is what we're founded on, you fan that flame. So you know about blacksmiths, for instance, they have those big, I think they're fans, but they have a name, and bellows, I believe they're called. And they will use their foot and make this thing blow into their fire. And the more that they fan it, the hotter it gets. So we do have to really nurture your fire. So when God gives you that spark and it starts to light, you got to nurture it. So that's how a fire would start. Now, sometimes the conditions aren't right.
That's true.
You know, like maybe you get a spark and it starts to take root, let's
Yeah.
say it that way. And then all of a sudden, it slowly starts to die. So you've got a small fire going, but it starts to reduce. And what do you get then is you often get what we see as that glowing little ember that's there.
Yeah.
So we all possess, every one of us possesses the capacity to make a flame. Doesn't that just excite you? You can make a flame. But as Jenna has already talked a little about, different types of fires, you have to choose if you want to go on and to rebuild or ignite the fire of your life. And it can burn bright if it's going to remain. It becomes an ember if it isn't. So you really have to continue working on that. Also, God is just really good about sparking things within us. So don't neglect listening.
Yes. Oh, that's so true.
Or sometimes pictures. Like the pictures he gave
Yeah.
us. So if you don't get that spark going, and even if you did get it going a little, then you have these embers. So we're going to talk about embers because we love this glowing picture of what a fire can be. It can be a beautiful thing.
Yes.
Embers and sparks are really very much alike. Under the right condition, both of them will ignite into a flame and grow into something when you think about it. So you've got an ember, and if you added more fuel to it, you would get something going. The difference between a spark and an ember is when you spark something, it's the beginning. It's the start of something. Whereas embers, they're kind of like, they're glowing, they're hot, but you can reignite them. I love that. That's the hope part. We never are left alone to say, sometimes there are places in our lives that do become ashes.
Yes.
They can. But embers are those little things that enable you to pick yourself back up. And there's that glow. Okay? So that's exciting.
It is.
Very exciting.
The other thing that you need with a fire, though, is some kindling.
You absolutely
You
do.
got to keep it going, right?
Yep.
So when the Lord gave us a God spark, as we call it, he was telling us about the parts of a fire,
That's right.
which I don't think a lot of people realize how many parts there really are to
Truly.
a fire.
Until we started researching it, right?
And so he was telling us about kindling, which is what you need to keep a fire going.
That's right.
And there's actually 3 types of kindling. And when we refer to kindling, we call it knowledge, as we told you a little bit ago. But the 3 types of kindling are tinder, kindling, and firewood.
That's right.
And when we refer to it as knowledge, we think of tinder as the things that you already know. How you were raised, what you learned in school, what shaped you. Those are what we kind of refer to as tinder.
Even like our culture is like a tinder of sorts because it informs how we're supposed to think and what we're supposed to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The definition of tinder is actually something that's highly flammable material that used to catch a spark. So think of yourself as you can catch a spark just like we catch God's sparks all the time.
That's why we call ourselves ember igniters.
Yes.
Is we want to spark. We want to give you knowledge in order for you to pick up those pieces in your life.
We do. We want you to be able to go and carry out your God-given life assignment.
That's right.
And we want you to be equipped so that your fire doesn't go out. So the second piece of kindling that we were given from the Lord was actually called kindling. And that is the knowledge that you are learning and using to grow yourself with. It's defined as a material that can be readily ignited, used in starting a fire. And these are bigger pieces of things, bigger sticks and branches. So you have to work at them a little harder. It could be like going to university or anything you do to expand your knowledge.
Listening, taking classes. Yeah.
The third is firewood. So firewood is the knowledge that you're expanding upon to take you to the next level.
Yeah.
So those are kind of like certifications that you may get in your life, or if you're going for a master's degree, continuing education, just anything that will take you to the next level. And it doesn't have to stop just because you've got a master's degree. There's always something to learn. You just have to find what you're passionate about.
That's right.
And then figure out how you can learn more about it. Just kind of like we did.
Yeah. Truly. It is a bit of a journey, but what I love about the firewood is it is a big piece that you throw onto what started as small. So you have that hope again that even if there's a small little fire burning, you can make it great.
Right. And the great thing about firewood too is that it's sustaining. It wants to make it so that your fire will burn for a long period of time, because you're going to take that knowledge with you everywhere you go.
That's right.
The last definition that we want to give you is what we call light. And the light is a luminous energy that makes things visible. And our hope, as we kind of said before, is that you are able to spark the fire in your life and light up the world and carry out your God-given life assignment. Yeah. Like we're all called to do, but sometimes we lose our way. And when you find it and get back on that path, it's just amazing what happens, and really what will happen quickly, and you won't see it coming.
That's right. That's right.
So now that we've gone over some of our terminology and told you about why we say things the way we do, you can now understand why we call ourselves Sparklight Ministry and Ember Igniters.
Exactly.
And we are just so excited to share with you what the Lord has laid on our heart for this message today.
That's right. We've really been excited. Tension. When you have excitement, you have some tension. We hope that we're doing a good job of conveying to you the various things in our lives. So one of the things that God also sparked in us was what is it exactly that we want to share with people? So I love that he gave us 7 unique words that all begin with the letter R. And they're the kind of words that are going to help to rebuild your fire. Because, as we've been saying, it is never too late to be great.
No, it's not.
So when the Lord walked us through all these things, it took a while for us to work through them. So we literally have walked through the steps of building a fire, and we are even now still in that place, right? Of God is pouring knowledge into us. We're trying to sustain the fire that God has given to us, and we're just 2 regular individuals. And if God can work through us, he can certainly work through you.
Absolutely.
So now we're going to talk about the very first 2 R's of our just wonderful platform that God has given to us.
Yes. So the first R is to reboot your mind. And I love the definition of what reboot means. Reboot means to restart, to make a change in something in order to establish a new beginning. How cool is that? Do you know that you can reboot your mind and establish a new beginning for yourself?
Amen.
Especially when you feel like there's no hope in sight.
That's right.
This kind of reminds me of a story about a girlfriend of mine who, she knows I go to the gym regularly in the mornings. I get up at 4:30 and I usually am at the gym by 5 o'clock. And she was conveying to me that she really wanted to go to the gym, and she started asking questions like, when do you go and what time? And I said, well, I get up, and go about 5. And her immediate response to that was, what? No way. 5 a.m.? That is way too early for me to get out of bed. I don't get out of bed until 7 in the morning. And I really just think about that conversation and just go, wow, that's kind of a mindset that she has. Because she's telling me that she wants to go to the gym so she can feel better, but yet she doesn't want to take the steps to get there. And it kind of reminded me of somebody who's okay with just fanning the flames of the fire that she's currently saying she's not happy with.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that someday we'll get her to the gym, but it was just really a point where the God was like, hey, that's what I mean by rebooting your mind, changing your mind, getting ready to do something different. And I remember for myself, when we started on this journey, one of those sparks to reboot for me was hearing this question be asked of what would have to happen in your life over the next year for you to be able to look back and say, wow, that was an amazing year.
Wow.
And
It's a great question, isn't it?
Yeah,
How often do we take time to reflect?
definitely to reflect, but I remember sitting there kind of bewildered going, yeah, what would have to happen? Because and then I started looking back and kind of almost regretting, like, wow, what have I really done?
Yeah.
Have I really done anything? Am I really doing anything to get closer to the goals or the things that I want? How do I do that? How do I get there? Because so far it looks like for my whole life I'm kind of just spinning my wheels and not really going anywhere, even though in my head I thought I was.
I like that you said spinning your wheels because, we all know the term reboot your computer,
Yes.
right? And often what happens to make us
The wheel.
reboot is we see this spinning wheel never going anywhere.
Yeah.
Nothing is happening and we're thinking, come on. And finally we have to make a decision. And so that brings us kind of, in a sense, that's the reboot, making a decision. But when you do that, there's another aspect that God showed us. And he said, you have to be able to recognize that choices have weight. And when we say weight, we mean they have ripple effects or impacts on you and on others as well. So, I was thinking about it and I said, unknowingly, every one of us blames something or someone for maybe the things that are lacking in our lives. It could be as simple as, I would not be in debt if I had gotten that promotion with that salary increase. I'd be doing much better.
That's so true. People
Even
say that all the time.
Don't they? Or this is almost me in some regard. If only my parents had encouraged me to go to college. And, I had this work ethic and they wanted us to work because my parents were immigrants. But I can say, well, my parents were the ones who kept me from going to college. No, I made a decision.
True.
And so I've been reading this book, and it's really great because it's entitled, believe it or not, The 12 Traits of the Greats. Well, we all want to be great. That's just an inherent thing within all of us. And this is what he says. So he says, you, not somebody else, but you must take responsibility for the outcome of your life.
Yes.
What? Really?
Really?
I mean, if you're honest, if you're really honest with yourself,
True.
You're going to find that you're living today with the result of decisions you've made in the past. Now, that's a pretty harsh statement for some people to hear. You might want to immediately go to, well, I didn't have any control over what my parents did to me or, the things that happened to me. You don't have control over some of those things, but how you process that is always going to be your choice. So in order to change any future that you have, anything that you want to do, you have to be willing. And that's the real key. You, not somebody else, you have to be willing to face and sometimes confront the people or the circumstances, or even the bigger challenges that you gave control to. That's a hard one.
That's really hard to swallow sometimes.
It is. It truly is. And I don't mean to diminish that.
Of course.
I mean, it's just a recognition. It's that first little spark of going, oh, I can take control of my life, okay?
We
So-
all like to be in control of things too, by
do.
the way. I mean,
We
come
do.
on, let's be real. We all love to be in control.
Well, I want to tell this story because it kind of represents the issue of control. So I had the privilege earlier this year to go to California to visit with my brother who was planning to retire, and he was building a home in Arizona. So I wanted to know where he was going to be living because we live very far apart. And so we decided that why not take one of the weeks that I was down there and just do a road trip
Oh, fun.
to all through Arizona up to where his home was. And a lot of you know about Route 66.
Mhm.
Well, we took Route 66
Oh, fun.
all the way up to where he was going to be. But what was interesting to me that kind of connects this dot for me was, so he had the vehicle. He knew the route to take. He had planned it out. And all I had to do was get in the car and be the passenger. And so off we go. And I don't really have any control of where we're going. And I'm not really paying too terribly close attention to
Mhm.
off ramps or on ramps or any of those things. I'm just having a blast being in the car, being comfortable, stopping when he needed to stop for gas, going, all the things you do on a road trip. Well, it's interesting that he has this adventuresome side. So sometimes he'd go, well, there's a little town. Let's go see what that is. And he'd go off. But I didn't have anything to say about it. He was driving the car. So I was like, I'm along for the ride. So we would go, and it was an adventure, and it was great. Well, I tell that little story because there's a part of us in our life that is like that. When we look at the Word of God, it does say in the New Testament book of Galatians, chapter 6, verse 5, it says, for each of us, okay, every one of us is responsible for our own conduct, or some versions say, carry our own load.
Mm.
So here I am in the car, and I could have said, I don't want to go there.
Oh, yeah.
But I just sat in the passenger side and allowed him to go there. So there are three really basic things that every one of us does have control over. Now, we might forget it, or it might have actually sort of been taken from us by the way we're spoken to. But the three things that we do have control over, and I really want you to hear me say this, it's what you think, okay? How you are processing what's going on, the things that you see, the images that you're putting into yourself, how you're looking at the world, that you can control. And then finally, what do you do about it? Your actions, how you respond. That brings us back to recognizing that your choices have weight. Now, I believe that you can change. I really do believe that you can change those very small little embers or the direction of your life by fanning it, right? We've been talking about fanning those embers. And so sometimes you just start with a small fire at first, but with additional fuel, right? We're going to talk more about that. You will soon have this wonderful, bright light of your true self. And because I believe in what the Word of God says, in John 10, verse 10, the Word says that the enemy, who is Satan, comes to kill, to steal, and to destroy. Okay, all of those things. When I say kill, there's an image that runs. Steal, you taking something that belongs to you, rob you of something. But Jesus said, but I've come that I can give you life. And I believe that that's what God wants us to do. So I think that what we need to do is take a moment and reflect on the truth of that.
Absolutely.
If God says that even though this one decision way back in the beginning affects you and me today, and we still have this same enemy who is coming to us and saying the things that are lies, like, Jena, you're not a very good mom. You shouldn't be yelling at your son like that. You're bad. You're a bad mom. Or maybe he says something like, you're just not very smart. You're never going to really be good enough. Sometimes there are things that people say to us, like, you'll never amount to anything. And there is a lie. And that's he's robbing you of your true self.
But how quickly do we pick that up and
Oh.
take it in and put it in our hearts and then believe it's true?
Yeah.
We do that so quickly. And I just don't understand it.
And the thing
Why?
is, exactly, why quickly do we believe that over the very truth of what God has said, who we are,
Yes.
what we're capable of, how he created us. Remember? In his image, a creative, loving, caring individual. So maybe there are areas in your life where you have to take some responsibility. That's not something we all want to look at, but
No.
you know, there's that saying, it's not always a good one, but there's some truth to it. No pain, no gain.
Yes.
So taking responsibility, looking at what are you responsible for? What have you allowed other people to be the driver in your life? Have you just been the passenger? Have you been sitting along, just going? There's our comfort zone fire.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been doing that? So what I like to do is take a moment. If you have pen and paper, that would be great. But if you don't, we can do this in our minds.
Yeah.
I want you to think of a trip that you're going to take. It's going to be a road trip. Okay. So I want you to imagine where you're going to go. So first of all, write down, I'm going to take a road trip, and for me, I would like to go to Yellowstone National Park. Well, if I'm going to take this trip, now, this is a funny thing that Jen and I just connected on the other day. I started saying, you have to get out a map,
Yeah.
right? And you have to plot your course. And so Jenna said, what?
A map? No. Pull out Google. Pull out your phone.
Well, I'm old school. We used to use maps, but I understand. So you get out your Google map, but you are looking to see what's the route you're going to have to take to get there, whether it's on a piece of paper map or whether you do it through Google Maps. Then you also have to figure out, now, the Google map is awesome at this because it'll tell you exactly how many hours, what time you'll get there, all those things. But normally you have to sort of say, how many days is it going to take us to drive there? Do we have enough money for that? How many nights are we going to stay? All of those kinds of things. So picture in your mind that you've now headed to Yellowstone National Park. You've got your route figured out. You figured out the cost and the time, and you get into the car and off you go. So you're the
driver.
You're the driver. You've set the course. You're going. Now, you could have chosen to be a passenger. Excuse me. So what I'm going to ask you is, would you rather be the driver or the passenger?
I like being the driver because I want to be able to make sure that I'm fanning the right flame.
Right. So you see, wow, little frog in my throat there. So you see, you can make changes in your life to take a course of action that'll get you to the place where you most want to be. So the question today for you that we want you to ponder on is, what action do you need to take today? Not tomorrow, not a month from now, but today, to fan that ember, that sort of semi-dying fire maybe that's in you, to rebuild a great big blazing fire in your life.
Because we're living proof it's possible.
Yeah. So we've just gone over the first two R's, to reboot your mind, make a decision, and then finally recognize that the choices that you make, they will have impact, whether on you or others around you.
That's right. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Well, we just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. We loved sharing with you the vision of fire that the Lord has given us. And in our next episode, we will talk about the remaining 5 R's of our 7, since we covered 2 of them today.
You really don't want to miss it. It really is the stones that God has laid out for us all.
It's totally true. And we just want to remind you to subscribe and share our podcast with anyone that is around you. We also want to connect with you. If you go to our website, www.sparklightministry.com, click on the prayer tab. We want to pray for you.
Yes.
Or if you're interested in praying over our ministry, you can connect with us and become a prayer arc. You just sign up right there. You can also find us on social media, Facebook, our YouTube channel. And we just want to leave you with, we hope that you can find your fire to carry out your God-given life assignment.
I also want to just point out, if there are topics that you have great interest in that pertain to how rebuilding a fire in your life might look like, or the struggles that you encounter not knowing how to move forward, we would love to hear from you. We're here to really be those ember igniters for you. So please also feel free to indicate in the prayer area what are the things that you would like us to talk more about. We want this to be not just about what we're saying, but what is going to improve your ability to see how God sees you. So
Go
out and set the world on fire.